Anybody feeling a little worn out on this pandemic yet? So this is recovery data, but I'm more going to hit on kind of relief expectations, and then maybe I'll lean on the three of you to also discuss some of the recovery data that you guys have looked at. I think it's really good for us to also talk about some individual stories on recovery. I can certainly talk about our own, and excuse me, sound a little froggy today. Thanks to IHRSA and Jeff Perkins, Jake Landry for the updates on relief here. So, you know, going in the back half of 2021, most of the conversations around small business relief and for gyms was sort of, as they put it, behind closed doors. As Omicron started to spike, those conversations are getting elevated greatly. And I've even noticed in the articles now, when they talk about small business relief, it's you know, restaurants, stages, gyms. And now we're not just the tail. We're no longer the tail on this, because then they'll say, and even minor league sports teams, right? So now we've at least moved up in that conversation in the press, and certainly the press on the Hill in Washington, D.C. So some of what's going on is that they're trying to. There's a House bill to renew the ERTC for Q4. And I think that's been a critical piece. So we're going to put up a one-click campaign link here, House Resolution 6161, and there's a one-click campaign to restore the ERTC for Q4 that they sunsetted late in Q3. As far as relief, the GYMS Act is what got us visibility, but that money has now been or that relief has now been handed to the Small Business Committee. It looks like it's going to be part of the omnibus spending bill that are usually, those bills are supposed to be passed by September 30th of the previous year to keep the government running. They keep pushing that out. That's now going to has to be balanced and signed in February. There's a lot of goodness to that, because both sides of the aisle have a lot of interest in getting that budget passed. And so that's where we sit right now. The annual spending bill has to be passed. Let's see. Anyway, we've moved to the front of the conversation as far as small business relief. They are talking very recently. The head of that committee has said we have to get small business relief, and we have to get it out there quickly. Same guy that has said restaurants, stages, and gyms. There's been a lot in the news. You know, I think a lot of us were kind of, I certainly expressed it, right, getting a little bit nervous. I mean, I am very happy for those companies that are doing well in this environment. Planet has done a fabulous job in this environment and was really bouncing back. We all kind of got a little nervous that might send a signal that the whole industry is doing that. Well, you might have all seen a lot of articles come out with, you know, saying the opposite. With that, let me stop right there and just see what other information you guys have to share about some data about how people are bouncing back.
Yeah, I'll jump in first there, Blair. You know, looking at ABC's portfolio, and ABC's been an amazing partner of the show and the industry. Their sales are, you know, so far this year are up over 7% over last year, and that's good news. But the full active members are up 145% over 2020 and up 108% over 2019. So, you know, that 19 number is what I look at. Where were we at the beginning of this mess? And so, you know, under the ABC umbrella of clubs, which I imagine the other billing and member management companies probably have similar data to share or in their portfolios, but about 108% increase, you know, getting back up to 8% growth. To me, that's extremely encouraging. I think Brent's got some information on the Rex ecosystem. Brent, what do you got?
Yeah, Rex queried all of their Rex Roundtable members in December, and Eddie Talk collated all that together, and the average recovery on membership dues recovery. So it's not total membership numbers. We have to make sure you understand there's a difference between the number of members and the dues line, but membership dues recoveries at 81.9% is the average for all of the Rex clubs. That's really strong. And of course, what we learned or was reinforced and we knew already, it's very geographically driven, right? I mean, if you have clubs in Canada, which has been shut down again recently, they're only at 25% occupancy now, or you're in New York, or you're in Oregon, you're in Washington State, you're in California, geographically, then you've had some hardships that other parts of the country haven't had. So if you're in some of the states that are, have had a more of a conservative approach to handling COVID, they're further out and a lot of them are recovering, especially if they've increased dues or the pricing, then their revenues in some cases are even higher than 2019, even though their membership number may be down. So it's really a mixed story, really driven by geography and where you are in the country and how long you've been able to be open.
One last one on.
But we also have to take into account that 22% of the clubs have closed,
Right.
25% in California. So we're encouraged by the clubs that are open.
Right.
So
Right.
maybe it's a culling of the herd, but if you guys are open, hang in there.
Yeah, one last thing on that, and then Sara, it's a good segue, I think, to the B2C marketing piece. A lot of club owners, a significant number of club owners I've talked to are there still, they're still existing because of the ERTC. And so there has been some relief. And I think without that relief, we might have seen another 10 or 15% of the industry go away. But now it's time to get out of this Omicron and start marketing out there. Sara.
And the ERTC is the employee retention tax credit,
Thank you.
quarterly tax credit that you get regarding filing with your payroll.
Right. Exactly.
So we're going to go into marketing. We love to start with a video. So here we go. I like this because it makes me, I feel a little bit positive, okay? Short form video, it's doing great, which means we got to do those TikToks, tend to be really good. A lot of marketing companies are planning to spend more money on their short videos. That means keep it to 30 seconds or below. I know Instagram, I know YouTube, Facebook, under a minute works, but I would keep it really, really short. Influencer marketing, we were chatting about this before we turned the camera on, and I was talking about a chicken that was making a six-figure income, and then I heard about a young kid that was making like 20 million or something. Talk about a good college education fund. But these influencers are great. And what I recommend you do, use the people that have high profile in your gyms. Use those groups, fitness instructors, those personal trainers, those front desk staff, people that are visible, and get your best members to make little videos for you. It doesn't have to be, a dedicated every other day of your life, but it's really a good idea. Audio content, people are getting a little zoomed out, of course, not at our talk show, but people are getting zoomed out. So they love the podcast because they can do two things at once. They can be driving to the gym and listen to a podcast. They can be doing an email, something like that. Social responsibility is key. People purchasing decisions more now than ever have become political decisions. So anything you can do to highlight your facility and the good things you are doing for your community, I would definitely go for that. And then inbound marketing strategies is a little bit harder to define, but we want to look at attracting, delighting, and engaging. That means attract someone, make them want to do it, make them feel like they belong, use different images, all people of all sizes, shapes, ages, whatever is your sweet spot for your facility, and then draw people in. but you got to have that link. You got to make sure there's a way for them to engage and get involved with your facility. So there you go, guys. What's working for you and your gyms?
Well,
Bill, go ahead, Bill. You're the expert in sales and marketing.
Well, I love what Sarah's talking about. I think it's right on target. It's back to the concept, just like in learning, micro messaging, right? How do you grab people's attention quickly and not lose it? How do you hit the core things that are most important? There's so much noise coming at people right now that they tend to tune out a lot of stuff. So how do you break through that noise with just relevancy? And what Sarah's talking about is how to position that relevancy. So I think it's right on. I will say one thing: as we digitize our sales process, and we're getting sales in a little bit, the in-person thing, that phone call when you can actually talk to somebody that you've connected with, still is a whole dramatically different event. I don't know about you, but I reached out to certain people during COVID, still am, just calling people randomly, checking in, and that's a different conversation than a text. And so keeping it personal and augmenting the marketing with the real human touch.
Yeah, the other thing I would add is, IHRSA did some research with Clearview Insights, and Blair helped with that, as did Bill's chief marketing officer at his organization, but a lot of the top people. And what came out of it was that as an industry, we really need to shift toward what we ended up calling the Reconnect campaign, that it's about immediate benefits for exercise, not long-term weight loss, not long-term, preventing strokes and heart attacks, but the immediate benefit to relieving stress, to improving mood, to making you feel better. All those things are important. And we need to kind of shift our focus away from being so aesthetic and weight loss oriented to more about, the lifestyle choices and just being active. So that's another thing I would say about marketing as far as shifts. And I'm seeing some of that research be used. Blair, I don't know if you've noticed, but some of the biggest players in our industry are using that theme right now in a big way.
Yeah, I was really happy to see that. And the whole thing on that research, basically, if I was to sum up that Clearview research, it was you have to emphasize the immediate emotional return on the effort of one workout.
Yeah.
So that benefit is not beyond the cognitive horizon of the customer. Wait a minute, you want me to, put in this much effort for a benefit way out there somewhere? No, got to talk about the immediate benefits, the emotional.
And connecting with your clients. There was a Logan Peters who owns Journey 333 just last night on one of our SCW webinars, was talking about how when people didn't show up to class, who had signed up to class, he was having his group fitness instructors call them. So if somebody who typically signed up for class didn't show up, call them, say, how you doing? We missed you. And invariably they came back and they show up. It's that personal connection. Totally agree with the three of you guys.
So that is a perfect segue into personalization at scale. We're going to share.
Hey, Blair, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Brent, can you give everybody where to find that Clearview information for those out there in the audience?
Yeah, we can, the IHRSA team can put it in the chat. Yeah, it's from Clearview Insights, and there's a great video that sort of gives an overview of their findings and how you might use it.
Yeah,
great. Thank you, Brent. Sorry about that, Blair.
That's all right. That's all right. So we're going to share a link to the article I'm talking about from McKinsey. And it's about personalization and what they've learned about personalization, especially through this pandemic. Keep in mind, they said that 75% of consumers took on some sort of new buying habit, buying channel. A lot of that was with companies that are sort of, a digital platform or digitally native. And so once people experience that, on Amazon or Netflix or something, they carry the idea of that experience with them when they go anywhere else. It's just like customer experience. People come into your gym, they're not comparing the member experience in your gym to the member experience they had yesterday. It's a collection of what was my experience like at Starbucks? What was my experience like at Hyatt? It's all those collective experiences are what cause things to continually level up. Well, that's what's happening in this idea of personalization at scale. And it happens like, how do you use your data in order to be relevant when you're messaging the customer at the right time? Getting it right is incredibly important. Getting it wrong is incredibly damaging. And our industry is so new at this. Had a great call this morning with ABC. Aaron Versamy from ABC and Pete Stiver from Modus Analytics. And we were talking about this, like, how are people actually collecting their data and really getting really good data hygiene early on so that we can play in this game later. But I thought that this graph was really interesting about what was most important when it comes to personalization. Number one, make it easy for me to navigate in store and online. I'm not going to read all these to you, but there are a few things on here that I think we are uniquely qualified to do. Celebrate my milestones. 61% of people said, celebrate the milestones. Last on this list, 40% said show up in my frequently visited websites and apps. I'm going to encourage everybody to take a look at this article from McKinsey and pay attention to the technologies that you're buying. Bill has emphasized this time and time again about your technology stack. How do those companies think about their APIs? Not just what are they doing right now, but think way ahead. Look at what ABC's doing with Ignite, with how they're bringing everything together and how they're thinking about that technology. I'll say one last thing, then I'm gonna hand it off here. Sara was describing people calling people that didn't show up in class. Don't mistake personalization with humanization. We all know damn well when it's been AI that caused that signal, and we know when we're comfortable with it. And I'm glad it recommended me to download this movie from Netflix based on what I watched before. It's pretty smart. I like how Audible recommends books based on what I've had before. It's not humanization. Humanization is even more powerful than personalization. I just want to make that point. And that we need to do both, or we'll get left behind. Let me just hand it over to you guys.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Blair, because I think people conflate both of those, right? They confuse and conflate personalization with dehumanization, and the old school club operators would push back and go, "Oh no, it's all about the people. You got to have the human touch." And we're not saying, and nor are they, that you're going to dismiss the human touch. You're just going to accelerate the advantages of it by making it more personalized, by automating parts of it that are great to do.
That's right. In some ways, you can automate parts of it that just leverage the value add side of making those phone calls. Maybe instead of digging through data to find out who didn't show up, if your data was just sending you a daily report that said, call these 5 people, right? If your system did that, now the technology's doing what it's supposed to do in order to enable better to better human interaction. And I think that's ultimately what our technology and our industry should be doing, is helping us leverage people to do what they're very best at, so they're not spending their time doing the non-value add stuff. And I say non-value add to the consumer. You digging through a bunch of reports is non-value add to the consumer.
We also can personalize some of the thwant that were automated that we used to think were great. Like, oh, let's get an answering machine, and I want a human to answer the phone. On those chat box, if you type in your question and it takes you down a chain, drives me insane. If you're going to have a chat box, which we all desperately need, inexpensive, everybody can afford it, have a person answering the chat box. So I would say, if we can't handle all the outgoing, like the personal phone calls, et cetera, engaging staff that we're short-staffed on, at least for the inbound inquiries that are coming into our facilities, let's try to personalize that.
Yeah. Totally, I totally agree. I think there's so much return on investment on the humanization. The personalization, I think, gets us to better humanization. Right? The more information, just like Ritz-Carlton has done for a long time, they have a data source in front of them that says what you like these pillows, you like. That's the use of data, so that I can be a really good host when you come in. We just need more of that in the industry, and I think we're going to get there.
Yeah, of course, one of the reasons we're talking about all this, and this is so important, is because we want those members to come back into our clubs or keep coming into our clubs, right? That's the behavior we're hoping to motivate as an outcome, or get them to join in the first place. Well, recently the 24-Hour Fitness joined forces with the University of Pennsylvania to do a behavior change study. And it was pretty broad. They surveyed and tracked the impact on 60,000 members at 24-Hour Fitness all around the country, just in the US, of course. And they tried several different strategies. I say several, I think it was like 48 different strategies to see what would be impactful of motivating the members to, increase their visits and usage in clubs. For example, to your point, an example, Sara, they sent text messages in advance of anything they had scheduled. So if they had a group exercise class reservation, they would get a text the day before reminding them about that appointment. They say that increased usage and attendance all by itself. If they didn't show up, again, to your example, they reached back out to those members and said, hey, we missed you. Sorry you didn't make it. We hope to see you back tomorrow. And oh, by the way, if you come in, then we have this point system. You're going to gain some points because you've re-engaged and you've shown up the next time you had the opportunity. And these are really sort of micro benefits, rewards. So they're not big things, but it just kind of gamified the fact that they were coming back into the organization. One other one that I thought was interesting that they said worked and increased usage, I believe 24% for the people, was that they just sent out general messages about, to Blair's point, as we were discussing earlier, not the long-term benefits of exercise, but the sort of real-time reinforcement of the benefits that you can get from being physically active, even at low levels. And also the trend in exercise about how society at large really has a heightened awareness about the need and the value of getting activity incorporated into your lifestyle. And even just those messages going out inherently show that they increase the participation as well. So it's a really great study. There's several articles on it. So I think that was really interesting about the behavior change, that it doesn't take a whole lot sometimes to motivate those members to come back in.
Yeah, it's interesting because it goes along with a lot of the information in that article from McKinsey on personalization, right? I mean, it was,
Right.
They weren't trying to sell them something. That's a big part of it too, is the consumer wants something relevant for the activities that they're doing. And so that text messaging was relevant for the activities that they were doing. You have a class tomorrow.
The text messaging was relevant because 90% of all people open their text messages, and we're lucky if we get 40%, who open up an email. So it really is numbers. But also what I like what that brings up, Brent, was 24-hour fitness. If people are educated, it tends to pull them in too. And I read a great article in the New York Times that talked about newsletters are one of the best ways to reach out and stay connected to people. Highlighting articles, let's say, on stress reduction techniques, which obviously would include exercise, and special classes. So newsletters, while we look at those as kind of being old-fashioned, they're still also an awesome way to connect.
Is anybody else sort of like, I'm fairly impressed that 24-hour fitness, one, did this type of research.
I agree.
And then two, that they're sharing it.
Yes.
Right.
A new day, isn't it, Blair?
It is. I am so pleased to start to see this, right? Like, how do we get everybody that's coming into the industry to stay in the damn industry, right? And not give up on us.
Yeah, one of the leading professors, and I know we've all read her books, but I'm having trouble remembering the name. Maybe you guys can help me because I know y'all read as well. Angela Duckworth. What was the book that she offered that we've all read?
It was, I'll tell you in a second. I have this.
Yeah, if anybody listens,
that's what I'm doing. I'm picking up my phone.
That is, but she was one of the leading professors at the University of Pennsylvania, or the Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business, that helped with this research. But point being, Blair, yeah, it's great that 24 Hours investing in this. They're acting on it. They're trying to find ways to keep members engaged, and that's just awesome.
Well, they have to rebuild their reputation too. I mean, you go chapter 11, you gotta come back. And I think they've got a fresh approach. I think that's good.
Well, it feels like a maturing of our industry too. Just overall, we started to say this as, we have this existential threat that has happened to us. And we all kind of stopped and said, it wasn't when you were shut down, you weren't saying, how do I sell memberships today? It's how the hell do I keep my members? And that fear, I think, has really moved us to a different, more professional place overall in the industry.
Yeah, great. All right. So sales strategy, Bill, something you
Yeah,
know a little bit about, I think.
this was like boiling the ocean for this segment. This started with my friend Sara Kooperman over there sent me an article from Sales Acceleration, and the article was called Sales Accelerator, and it was about compensation, and that's a good place to start. But the concept was, how are we designing our comp plans to incent behaviors that drive the business forward in a long-term fashion versus a transactional fashion? And so, we've all dealt with comp plans. I'm not going to get into a tactical thing here on talks and takes, but looking at that comp plan on all your key positions that you're trying to drive revenue on, and making sure they're aligned with the long-term goals, not the transactional goals. But when we talk about sales strategy, this is the perfect opportunity to keep a few things in mind. Go back and look at your initial feasibility work, your analysis, your market penetration and number of people in your market. Go back like you're starting your business all over and see how many likely joiners are out there for your product, because that'll answer a lot of questions for you. It'll answer what's your price point? How many members do I need to get where I want to go? Should I go upstream or should I stay where I am? Or in rare occasions, go downstream. But go back to the beginning and don't take that stuff for granted. Because once you understand how many likely joiners you have, you can answer your price point question. You can answer who you're targeting and how you're going to target. This is a time to reevaluate everything. Our good friend Joe Cerulli talked about how many online sales he's generated by changing some of the text and copy and approach that he has as an online sales. Consumers want to buy without hassle. So really dive into that online sales approach. So that's kind of a macro thing to go back to the beginning. On a micro level, a couple points I want to point out. Share benefits that the consumer is not even aware they want. And we have a lot of that with the COVID thing. People still come in for weight loss and for activity, but share what you're doing to treat that whole person. We've talked a lot about humanization. Blair shared a lot about that. Treat the whole human with regard to what we add value on. And that's a big deal. And, some of the products out there, Gym Cells and some of the other products, they let you research your customer before they ever come in your door. If you have their email address, you can see their LinkedIn profile, what have you. Understand your customer and really dive into that. And then the last thing I want to talk about, just from a strategic mindset, is we all have beliefs and we all have disbeliefs. In sales, we're usually held back by our own mental limitations. I used to play a game with a new salesperson where I would tell them there's a prospect in the lobby. They came in specifically to join, go through the whole process, but they're here to become a member. In truth be told, I knew nothing about that prospect. I made all that up. They could have been at the movie theater and stumbled in. But 99% of the time, that brand new salesperson sold that person a membership because they didn't have a limitation in their mind that this person wasn't going to join. And so, we got to have a belief system that we're going to survive this and we're going to come out stronger than we were. And we're going to sell more memberships than we did in 2018 and 2019, and we got to teach our teams not to have limitations that are holding us back. So anything's possible. And it starts with belief. So I kind of bounced around a little bit there, guys, but there's a lot to unpack. Go back to when you first opened your club and look at your market and your product, and don't fall in love with your product. A lot of us in this industry fall in love with our product. Who do we need to fall in love with, Blair?
Customer.
Our customer.
Remember, man.
Fall in love with our customer, right? Love your customer, not your product, and that's where it all starts. So I'll throw it out there, but that's kind of where I started with just some things that I want to look at. I worked with a good friend of ours on his approach, and we tweaked his membership offerings. We looked at how many members. Some of what he was doing, the majority of what he was doing is right on, but he had a gut check that he's still on the right track on his strategy. And just don't take it for granted, reevaluate.
I think there was a very good article in Harvard Business Review, November, December of 21, so just last month. Fred Reichheld on what they're calling a Net Promoter 3.0 and really attaching hard financial edges to it. And I think this should be part of your sales strategy too, is net revenue retention. They'll talk about earned new customers versus bought new customers and how to tell the difference between those. And then you start to get an idea of how much a great customer experience and customer loyalty actually drives your sales strategy. It's easier to have a sales strategy if you're really delivering on your promises internally and are constantly adjusting to the customer internally. And as we get into the Q&A piece, we'll talk. I would like to bring up Elizabeth Asher's question as we get into the Q&A piece on that, because she's dealing with some stuff that we're dealing with too, and as far as adjusting to the customer. So I'll finish with that. Harvard Business Review, November, December, and NPS 3.0.
Before we go to the next topic, one of our listeners and a colleague, I think most of us, all of us may know, at least those of us on the call, Emma Berry, said Angela Duckworth is the author of Grit. Of course, now I remember it very vividly. So it's a great book. I highly recommend it. It's in the chat if you want to see where you can get that book. But Angela does some really great work. She's a great author. And she was one of the lead professors in that research with 24-hour fitness. Okay, Sara, over to you about some of the trends, the latest and greatest.
Oh, you know I love trends. I love trends. I think that they, you got to tie it all back to sales. How are we going to attract more people to our facilities? How are we going to keep them coming back? What are they interested in? And one of the things that I was just inspired by Bill and Blair talking about this, it's like, do we go back? Do we go forward? Like when you're talking about sales and you're talking about marketing, I still believe somewhat in print work, but we've got to go forward. Number one thing was for ACSM that we're talking about, wearable technology. But that started all the way back in 2019. So the big dramatic changes we saw, I went back to all our SCW events that we ran in 2021, which felt like there were like 20 of them. And for number one, we had active aging and then functional training, and strength training rose to number three. And so the parallels I saw between ACSM, which really focuses on academicians and ACSM certified instructors, and the difference with SCW that looks more at personal trainers, group fitness instructors, club owners, and managers. The parallels were really obvious. Strength training, personal training, and HIIT training dropped down. So I think that that's what I found pretty interesting.
You know what I found pretty interesting, Sara?
I found it what? I found
pretty interesting. Not much of it.
It's a lot of it's repetitive.
It seems like trends, and I've been watching these like year after year after year. It's the same list. There might be two or three that move around. The only thing on that list that I hadn't seen, really come out strong was home gym equipment, which makes sense during the pandemic, but not to rain on your parade, because I think it's good information. But I think if you go back and compare the last 5 years of trends, I'm not sure really there's a lot of movement in those.
No, the only thing that I saw new at ACSM was health wellness coaching.
Yes.
It was number 10, but it made it. Yeah. And HIIT dropped down from 1 to 5 to 7. So I think HIIT is declining. I would tell clubs, start doing lifestyle coaching, nutritional coaching. I think that that's important, and that crossed over. And I saw something rise for SCW, exercise science. I was like, nobody cared in the past about exercise science. Really, they don't care. They want to go and learn how to do a step touch with a pivot. At least that's what Blair wants. But they care now. They want to learn about immunities and wellness and stress reduction.
I wonder, what is the trend though? In other words, like I see who they're asking. Is the trend, these are the top topics that these people talk about? Or like, I want to know, like from the consumer level.
So what?
Like what's happening there? What's happening from the consumer level? And I'm wondering if that's dialing into that or not, or to your point, Sara, about who they're asking, are these just the topics that they're most interested in? I don't know. I don't know what the methodology is exactly around that.
Well, for ACSM, they put out 40 topics, and then they shoot it out to about, I think it's about a little over 70,000 individuals. And the respondents were actually about 4,000 responses. So they got a very good response rate. SCW is about the same number, so it was really good. But these were going out to the professionals what they think the trends are. I'm not quite sure if it's really a prediction or a reaction to 2021.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that a lot of gyms have underestimated the value of their strength equipment. I mean, when you go to trade shows, when you go to IHRSA, everybody's jazzed about all the latest cardio, the bells and whistles, the programs, and the consumers are saying, "Hey, when I'm in a crunch, I can do cardio on my own."
Right.
So that's the movement of the strength. I think was one of the things that did kind of have resonance with me. And then, I use a digital scale and an Apple Watch wearable, and that's part of my whole person about wellness stuff. So I'm not sure what we do with all that in the club environment. We've played around with it here and there, but that's not going away, and that's part of the person's whole self with regard to their wellness and fitness. And so we have to be aware of that and figure out how we fit that in.
Yeah. One last thing I see, Jason Rowan, I agree with him here. He said he's surprised to see the recovery wasn't in the top 10. From what he's seen, has made a big jump. I mean, look at, you can't see, what Theragun, what Therabody is doing, what you see HyperIce, you see it everywhere in pro sports. And really that just has to be, I totally agree with him. That's got to be, that is a real trend, I think.
Yes, I agree.
But maybe that's just, like Bill said, maybe recovery now, you can find any yoga class, any meditation app online. It's accessible, like cardio equipment is. You can walk your dog. So maybe that's where that's coming from, the lack of recovery.
That's a cooking class, how to walk your dog. Right, Bill?
I'm not coming over for dinner, Bill. Or Blair.
I didn't say anything about animals.
You laughed.
I was just picturing Blair walking a dog that was dressed in a little dress. So my topic right now is medical innovations, and I'm a big fan of a gentleman by the name of the medical futurist. He's the medical futurist, and he comes up with some pretty on the fringe things that are happening in medical innovation. And his 5 top innovations for 2022, 3 of them resonate with our industry for me. I'm going to give you all 5 real quick. Vocal biomarkers, how to detect chronic conditions, disease, and issues from people's vocal patterns. I think that's kind of interesting. We're not going to spend time on that, but that's how far out some of this research and thinking is. The other was AI in diagnostics. AI, artificial intelligence, is becoming more and more used in diagnostics in the office of the physician. Now, we've heard about special cases where, you've had Big Blue, IBM supercomputer analyze cases and compare medical journals against, rare diseases and give doctors second opinions. And it was a subscription model. But AI being used in a doctor's office as a physician's assistant, that's a new thing that's starting to happen. And that has some resonance with our industry. How do we use artificial intelligence to better train our clients? If they got a condition, do we just go, oh, well, I have a specialty certification in orthopedic, injuries as a personal trainer? Well, why don't I tap my AI and see what other physical therapists and trainers have done with clients with exactly this condition that are being treated by the medical side. I just think that AI opportunity is going to be an opportunity for us as we continue to grow. We all talked about chatbots. Chatbots are a big thing in the medical community. It lets them triage patients, especially right now with the overload of patients coming into the healthcare system. You can do a lot of diagnostics with a chat box and get people where they need to be and cover some of the basic inputs. How we use chat box in our environment, to Sarah's point earlier and Blair's point about humanization, that's tricky. That's key. I like what Sara said earlier about a human on the other end of that thing. But you can drive technology with chatbots to alleviate some of the staffing constraints that we have in our industry. Number 4 was at-home lab kits, lab testing. That's a huge opportunity for our industry. There's in Inc. magazine, I'm going to share a little bit of commentary, what they had in a recent article, but they're calling it scientific wellness. So it's not just wellness, but using science with wellness. And the concept there, according to the Inc. article, was you should have as much science involved in recommending a vitamin supplement as you do a drug. And a lot of times we don't do that. We don't put that science behind supplementation and micro and macronutrients and so on. So the at-home testing kit environment is another opportunity for our members in our facilities. Number 5 was digital health insurance. I'm not going to spend any time on that. The U.S. has an interesting market when it comes to health insurance, and that's not particularly applicable yet with what we are talking about. But treating the whole person, the whole telehealth, we've learned about that. Docs have learned about it. There's so much parallel going on between what the medical community is doing with technology and treating the whole person prevention-wise and what we're trying to do on our end. And I really like the term scientific wellness. How do we use data? How do we use customization, personalization, and humanization to treat the customer towards their goals? And so I just find it really interesting in looking at what's going on in healthcare and looking at what makes sense and what we can adopt and work together in, because the consumer consumes both products, right? I mean, everybody uses healthcare at some point, and we want people to live a healthy, well life. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share today on medical innovation.
And that I found what you just talked about really, really interesting, because what they're doing now also with the medical community is you get a concierge doctor. So many people are looking at that because you get, like you've always said, 8 minutes with one physician, 8 minutes here, and they don't talk to each other. So the Mayo Clinic is doing a wonderful thing, executive checkups that they do. And it gives you more of that concierge, someone takes care of you. And if that oversees maybe the audiologist and maybe a mammogram and everything that you need to get, like for me as a woman, going through it. And what about if we could implement that in a fitness facility, that everybody does get a life coach or some type of coach that helps them navigate through the system? I thought that was fascinating. And one more thing, Bill, that I found interesting is actually technology is looking at earbuds rather than just watches for temperature and heart rate and all the different systems, and it's less invasive, and you can keep going on with your life without even having to look at something.
Yeah. One last point, Sara, on that point. People want to take care of themselves, but a lot of people also like the blessing and the help of a doctor in that journey. And if you don't think the medical community is going to get involved in wellness and fitness in a bigger way, you're misreading the tea leaves. It's happening already.
They're already estimating that the wellness category is going to grow by 10% or more in this next year to over 7 trillion. So they're going to be involved. So is tech.
Yep. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. All right, Sara. Saying no to burnout.
Saying no to burnout. I I really, really love this topic. I really love this topic because it's, you know, I feel the burnout strain. I read this great article. This came from Fortune magazine, and I started out by reading 4.3 million workers quit their jobs. And typically SCW has been immune to the people leaving us, and it's just changed. And I think everybody's feeling the burnout. And for me, it's like taking a physical inventory, seeing how I'm feeling, devise a plan. The one thing that I saw missing in that article was working out. I was like, Fortune magazine, what are you talking about? Reducing stress. Number one way, work out. And then adjusting your goals and expectations, is finding help, asking people for help. A lot of times we think we're strong, we're gonna do it all, do it for everyone. No, now is the time to ask for help, and think we, not me, being very authentic, really supporting your staff, asking them to support you. And I did like saying no to yes, because I worry about that. Do I go back? Do I move forward? Some of my new projects that I want to do may have to wait because of Omicron. I'm not quite sure where we're going to land. So it was pretty, this saying no to burnout really struck home.
And leadership matters. There's a graphic, I think, Christine, can you put that graphic up for a second? This was, I think we have it. Really interesting on employees with women managers more likely to say their managers support and help them over the past year, not by just a little bit. These are pretty big margins, the difference between a female manager and a male manager. I think there's a lot we should be learning from this. Emotional support, checking in, making workload manageable, navigate work life, actions to prevent burnout. And so I think, I think there's something to learn from this right here. Again, it comes from McKinsey. They're just a great source of information. Also then, like for me, and when you start to feel that burnout, it's when you're kind of forced into doing, I should say, you feel forced into doing all the things that you really don't like to do. I think of Elizabeth Ash's question right there. When you have to deal with members, conflicts, and you're going on 2 years of doing this, right? And it's just not fun to go back into your gym and see this happening. When it's not fun to go into your house, that's where burnout, I think, starts. And then you're dealing more with the financial side and it's just not the fun side of the business. I think you're way more susceptible to burnout.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a colleague just last week, one of the top operators in the country, and he was sharing that, our industry is kind of filled, and he saw himself in this light as well, as you rise to the occasion, right? So COVID hit, you jumped in the fray, you're fighting the battles with the members and getting the loans, and you're just fully engaged because you feel like you need to be to survive, right? And you're in the throw and you're fighting the battle. And now we're sort of, I hate to say on the tail end because I don't want to jinx anything, but we've kind of gotten that down and we're in a little bit more of a rhythm, kind of getting back to normal. And now there's a sense of, the crisis in some ways has passed a little bit, and you don't have that rush of adrenaline to keep you going. And so I think it's a combination of these things. I'm really glad you included this topic, Sara. I think myself included, could be a lot more empathetic and just, be on the lookout for people that don't seem to be themselves.
And be aware that as we're short-staffed and you have people working longer and longer hours, and if you're in one of the states with the mask and vaccine mandates, that is just not fun. The job that they used to have of being a host or hostess and the life of the party, so to speak, as we like to coach our front desk, that's tough. Yeah.
And you got to do it with the mask on. Can't smile, and don't tell me your eyes smile. It just doesn't work.
All right.
Well, we're going to switch to a little more fun topic, at least, than burnout: the chicken and pickle. And you may not know what that is, but let me start off by saying in 2020, 4.2 million people in the United States played pickleball, which is up 21% compared to 2019. So it's the fastest growing sport in the United States. And I know it's catching on around the world as well. According to USA Pickleball, the average age of people playing pickleball is 38 years old. And courts have increased significantly around the country. And every city, municipality, you see they're offering public pickleball courts. Clubs, of course, that are multi-purpose have been converting some of their tennis courts, or if not converting, at least making them dual purpose with some, highlighting of the pickleball lines on top of the tennis court. So there really is an impetus for that. And I think one of the things that's attracting people to pickleball beyond the activity and the fun is the second category of friends. It does lend itself. Dave Cardone, who runs Memorial Athletic Club in Houston, pointed this out when I talked to him this last week. He said one of the reasons people enjoy pickleball so much compared to, let's say, racquetball, if you're a racquetball player, and I used to be a big racquetball player as well, you're in that racquetball court and it's hard to have a conversation with somebody because it's echoey and it's loud. It's just not really comfortable, especially if there's more than two people there. Or tennis. And tennis by nature and its culture is a, sort of a quiet game. You're not supposed to talk much between points and, sort of keep it quiet. Plus the distance is quite large about tennis. Or golf. Most of the community around golf really happens in the cart as you're driving to the ball, but that's just one or two people. And pickleball keeps people close. It's fun. It's fast. There's other courts right nearby. It sort of has this cultural element that is really good for community. So the chicken and pickle is one concept that's kind of expanding across the country. Go ahead to that next slide there, Christine. And they're combining sort of the element. Another colleague of mine, Frank Lawrence in Little Rock, says this is the top golf equivalent in pickleball, where you're combining this activity, but you don't have to be that good. Everybody can go and play, but you've got the food, the beverage, the shuffleboard in between points. You're keeping score, but it's lighthearted, and it's really this sort of community effort. So it's really growing around the U.S. And I can say among my roundtables, many of my clubs are jumping into pickleball, feeling like it's got some legs and it's going to be a good move for them from a revenue standpoint into the future. Bill, any of your clubs got pickleball yet?
No, but I will say that everywhere I look, Parks and Rec in a lot of communities are adding pickleball spaces where they have space near their tennis. And again, I go back to Dr. Michael Porter's work on strategy. The threat of substitution is something our industry faces. If there's a substitute activity people can do somewhere else, that's competition. And if you're not paying attention to this mega trend going on in communities around the world, you're going to miss some opportunity there. So I'm a believer that this is an avenue of offering that clubs need to be taken very seriously.
A lot of the rec center right by me, they didn't need to build a specific pickleball court. They just used the tennis court, lower the net a little bit, add a few lines, and it was a great way to add something with no added expense, and you can take it indoors and do it on a basketball court. And again, they threw down this YMCA, threw down some tape, and pickleball it's getting huge.
Yeah,
it really is.
You see Herb's comment? Comment here.
What do you say?
That you guys know where he is now at Lake Travis now. Very exclusive boating club. And by the way, get his book Caring. You can get it on Amazon. It's awesome. But he said they're converting a test court to 4 pickleball courts, and that the members are begging for that. And when Brent, your lead into this, kind of describing stuff I'd have never thought of, right? When you're describing the difference between the racquetball and the tennis and pickleball, I'm thinking that's kind of interesting. That was invented by a Washingtonian who lives on Bainbridge Island.
Is that right?
And you know that the number one gift for retirement now is not a watch, It's a pickleball set. It's like 2 paddles, a couple balls, and a little case.
I'm
And
sure
then
that was.
you have to go buy a court then after that
Nah, just throw down some tape.
on the lawn.
Well, it has caused, and Herb probably knows this, the pickleball fans want pickleball courts and they want to convert to tennis courts. The tennis players, for the most part, aren't real big fans of that.
It's funny though. Evie Gillen from Wenatchee Racquet Athletic Club, she just said that pickleball's been adopted as the official sport of Washington.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah. So one of my roundtable members told me the same thing. I thought he was just kidding me, but I guess that's true.
It is it's a great sport. I don't think you guys remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I ended up with a meniscus tear because I was going full out in my pickleball class that I was taking.
That was right after you
I'm
hurt.
scared of some of these people.
That was right after you hurt your leg skiing and got the hockey to the head and what
Oh,
else?
yeah. I'm a little aggressive with whatever I do. Thank you for bringing that up, Brent.
All right, Bill, you got a little bit of recap. Can you recap kind of what we may have shared today?
Yeah, I'll do rapid fire recap for you, Brent.
All right.
Blair reminded us the importance and value that the ERTC added, and there's a one-click campaign, employee retention tax credit. If we can get that back in place, it'll make a difference for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are surviving today because of that program. Those that survived are bouncing back. We've seen some good numbers. Sara pointed out that 22% reduction, in capacity or in supply. But the people that are still alive out there are growing, and we're starting to get back to numbers, looking similar to 2019. So everybody hang in there. Sara jumped into marketing, the importance of short video and audio. Reconnect, and Brent jumped in with the Reconnect campaign that IHRSA did, and we've added those resources on the chat box. Brent also shared the Clearview research. We were talking about emotional return. One workout can start to impact how somebody feels, and so honing in on the experience within their life and how you communicate that. People calling people. So good summary on what's happening out there with marketing opportunities. Blair came back in with personalization. Collective experiences. It's not just what happened at your club last week, last month, yesterday. It's what happened at Starbucks this morning. You're dealing with a person that's living a life. How do you fit into that life in a holistic manner? I love the quote of the day for me was
You love the quote of the day from yourself. Is that what you're saying, Bill? Is that what you just said?
The quote of the day for me.
Oh,
I misspoke. I was trying to go fast. The quote of the day from me is scientific wellness. I love that. Well, that was Inks, but I love that. But if I had to not use that one as the quote of the day, I'll use this one. Personalization versus humanization. Blair shared that with us, and you got to have both. Brent came in with driving behavioral change. Talked about the 24-hour study and the benefits of that. Email reminders, increased participation, newsletters, and highlighting benefits of exercise, increased participation. So encouraging behavioral change through communications. I did the deal with sales, and I said, fall in love with your customers, not the product. My good friend, Robin Klaus, that I used to work with, put in the chat box, no, don't fall in love with the customer or the product, fall in love with the customer's problem that you're trying to solve. Robin, I appreciate that comment. I think you fall in love with the customer to make them love being there, but you've got to be in love with that problem that you're trying to solve for them. So, look at your sales from a human approach and not as a process alone. Sara jumped in with trends. We had a lot of good debate about ACSM's trends, where the different categories moved. I was interested in wearables and strength training. We had some people in the audience that rightfully so pointed out recovery wasn't on there. Don't understand that one either, but we had active aging. One of the things that Sara's brought up a few times now is HIIT seems to be going down while strength comes up, and home gym entered the category for the first time. I talked about medical innovations. Scientific wellness, we hit that pretty hard. We all had a lot of opinions on that, so I won't spend much more time on that. Sara gave us saying no to burnout. One of the things I love that she said is saying no to yes, saying no to good ideas so you can do the current things you're doing so you don't get overwhelmed. You got to be disciplined enough to say no in your life in order to manage your stress. Reset your goals and expectations was another great piece of advice with regard to that. Chicken and Pickle from Brent, bringing us home. I wasn't sure if Blair was trying to take credit for Washington inventing chicken or pickleball, but we now know that pickleball is the official sport of Washington. A good food, good friends, great fun. I really did learn a lot about the nuances that you shared, Brent, with regard to tennis and racquetball, being able to converse and have those social interactions versus other activities. That was a gem right there. Thinking about all the things that we do that increase social opportunity versus just training opportunity. And it is out there. Parks and Recs, clubs are repurposing spaces. Pay attention to all the trends that are happening, and that's a big one. Back to you, Brent.
All right, excellent as always, Bill. I'm seeing in the chat, and before I start with the questions, first of all, somebody's suggesting that to Sara and Bill, it's chat bot, not chat box.
Not chat box. Chat bot.
But I think we got the point anyway.
Yeah, I had it written right. I knew it right. I might have just said it wrong. I apologize.
Well, that's that California, Arizona slang you have.
I think it's North Carolina really coming out.
Yeah.
I think we just made a mistake, but that.
Chatbot.
Okay.
It's like a little robot inside the computer. It's a
Yeah.
chatbot.
That's it. That's from our good friend Frank Ancharski, Bill.
Leave it to Frankie.
Yeah. All right, Blair. And you mentioned this, and I think Bill, maybe you did as well, but I'm not sure the audience understands really when you refer to we want to earn our customers, not buy our customers. What do you mean by that?
Well, one way you'd look at it is net revenue retention. Basically, of all the customers you had a year ago, look at this year and what was the revenue retention of that as a percentage. Earned customers come from referrals. The way that they're looking at it when they're putting together at an enterprise level for large kind of global 2000 companies, an earned customer is one that says, I chose your business because of your reputation. I chose your business because, 3 other companies are using you and they have, that's how I chose your business, as opposed to, let's say, I chose to buy because you had a very helpful salesperson. That's also very positive, but that's different. That's what we're calling a bot customer. I chose your business because you have a special going. That would be considered a bot customer as opposed to an earned customer. Those companies that have the best customer experience recognize a lot more net revenue retention and far more earned customers. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
And I think we're also automating that. So we used to just think referrals were like, I recommended it to my friend when we were standing in line for Starbucks. But it's now rate your customer experience. People are putting stars. Every time I buy something on Amazon, I'm looking how many people reviewed it and how many stars it got. Same with Yelp. So our referrals, okay, help me here, Bill. Personalization, humanization. Which one is it?
Personalization and humanization. It's both.
Okay.
Yeah. And so one thing on that too, and in the article in HBR, I do like that Reichheld comes out, and he doesn't say net promoter score, by the way. He talks about net promoter systems. He and Rob Markey are the ones that invented it, and that's how they talk about it as a net promoter system. In other words, how has your organization become a system for creating loyalty? Now you can get a score and it's a net promoter score. I like that he sort of admonishes the use of how people are using net promoter score. And I've been saying this for a long time in our industry. A lot of people, it's just a BS way they use NPS. They're contaminating their data for years to come. They use it as a tactic to get somebody to refer something or to go give a review. And it becomes a vanity measure and not an operation, not something that you're really adopting to make your damn business better. And it's not, that's the measure. You got to figure out the drivers of it. I'll stop there. Also talk.
There's one other point to that. I mean, it's just like B2B, right? How many companies buy revenue versus earn revenue, right? Let me buy another company versus grow my own market share.
Absolutely.
So it's the same principle. So if you're buying revenue, if you're buying customers, That's important and can be valuable, but that's a different thing than growing your own market share.
Right. Growing organically, right? Both are important. You got to do both, but the more you can grow organically, the more powerful both sides of that are.
Right on.
Yeah. So Sarah, I was giving you a hard time about your trends, but there really were some good things in there. There's a question about the health coaching in the chat. Can you talk a little bit more about what that might really look like based on, your interactions with your groups?
Well, you do not need to get a special degree or a special license to be a quote legal, like a health coach, life coach. There are plenty of certifications out there. ACE has a certification, I believe, on lifestyle. SCW, we have a certification on coaching with Kimberly Spring Glick, who's very well known in the industry. So instructors, personal trainers, especially personal trainers and instructors, can go in and get certified in this and become a life coach. And yes, there are 4-year degrees in this, but I think it would integrate, what am I going to do at home? What am I going to do at the gym? What am I going to do? I'm not even sure if you can integrate your physician to this if you're on any medications, and what's your workout and your nutrition going to be. So it seems like there should be somebody overseeing all these different health and wellness aspects. And we don't really have a specific person on that. We used to have our GP, our general practitioner, that we could go to for everything, and you can't anymore. So I think the lifestyle coaching is gonna become more and more important.
Yeah. Okay. Good answer, Sarah. Another question, kind of comment, is that perhaps they're suggesting that perhaps wearables increased on the trends list, Sarah, because people working out in their home gyms, et cetera, and that HIIT maybe decreased on the list because less people are going back to the gyms that are, responding to these surveys. They're getting those workouts online or virtually at home. Any thought about that?
I don't agree. I don't agree that the reason HIIT is declining is because they're getting it at home like you do recovery, like your yoga class or whatever you can get online, or walking your dog for cardio. I think HIIT is declining because it's hard to do. And there's a lot of injuries that come from it. I think the reason pickleball is just shooting up, and I was so surprised, Brent, when you said the average age was 38. So surprised, because I thought it'd be 65. Yeah. And I think it's because everyone can do it. And I don't think everyone can do HIIT. So that's why I think it's declining.
Wasn't the premise that potentially HIIT's going down because people can't access clubs like they could?
Yeah.
I don't think that's the premise. I just don't. I think it's just too hard to do, and you get too many injuries.
Yeah, I don't know. Be interesting to see the trends from 17 and 18 on HIIT.
Yeah. HIIT's been popular for a while, and although the group exercise instructors and sort of devotees of group X probably understand what HIIT is, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what HIIT is.
Well, also,
yes.
I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but Melissa, her comment, the way people view health and wellness has changed. They realize they don't have to kill themselves; they just have to move. Right. And and please, if we can adopt that, we're going to get a lot more people, into our gyms. That's got to be part of the trend. Sara at SCW, I would say probably 2 or 3 years before the pandemic hit, was seeing a reduction, I believe, in the interest in HIIT before the pandemic, if I remember right, Sara. So it's been on a decline, I think, as far as interest at SCW events for a few years before the pandemic.
There seems to be a little bit more shift towards strength training, functional training. And I think it's because people are looking at how am I living my life? For 2 years, For 2 years, I've been able to, oh, I didn't go out to a restaurant. Oh, I didn't go to the gym. And they're looking at their lifestyle, and 4.3 million people are quitting their jobs, and people are retiring early. And it's my quality of life. I want to think about my quality of life. And it's not like, how can I pound myself for 30 minutes for a 30-minute workout? Is that going to improve my quality of life? And I think sports like pickleball are improving because you can do your physical activity and still chat and connect. And pickleball requires 4 people on a court. It's not like tennis where you can do it with 2 people. You got to have 4.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, please, Blair.
I didn't know. It's the official sport of my state. And
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, that, and all they do is they play pickleball with apples. But it's just, you know, they want to connect more. And I'm not sure. A lot of people adore HIIT because it's very intense. You work out, and there's multiple different ways you can do it, but you work out really intensely for a short period of time, let's say even 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and then you recover for almost 2 to 3 minutes. And then you work out really intensely. And it's that abrupt intensity, if the body isn't warmed up properly, that causes the injury, apparently.
Yeah, and people really have been drawn to, we're getting too far into HIIT, but they've also been drawn to it, Sarah, right? Because it's promoted as a high calorie burner, right? And you can do it for a shorter duration than a continuous intensity exercise and get similar benefits.
Right.
Right. So those are 2 big things. But I think Blair, you know, touched on one thing I'd like people to take away again, when we talked about it quite a few times last year, and that is this concept of, just as was put in the chat, you don't have to exercise really hard to get a lot of the benefits. When we talk about mood, when we talk about stress relief, when we talk about doing something for yourself, all of that doesn't require you to do HIIT or anything that intensely. And I think as an industry, we've got to embrace that. Although so many of us on the call, I'm sure, are used. We like the HIIT, we like the intensity, but the masses out there in the public, that's not where most of them are.
And think about what Dr. Cooper said at IHRSA at the keynote. You don't have, you know, to be healthy, you don't have to be at the high end. Just be moderate.
The majority of the benefit comes from moving from very poor to fair.
Yeah.
And then moving up beyond fair, there's incremental improvements, but as far as quality of life and health, longevity, all those benefits really come at the lower end of the spectrum.
Yep.
And we can, as club owners, we can engage more of those people. I would love to have a club filled with fair people.
So you can beat them on the pickleball court, Sarah?
I'd kick their gluteals. Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, hey, a good call again today. We thank the audience again for joining us. Thanks to ABC for sponsoring us. And of course, we've got Blair with MXM, Sara with SCW, Bill with Active, Rex Roundtables, and Eddie Talk have been tremendously supportive. Of course, IHRSA is still helping behind the scenes to put on this great show. We hope you've enjoyed it and hope you join us again next month.
Sorry we didn't get to all the questions. That was awesome, though. See you on the next one.
Yeah, happy 2022.
We were thinking about another show focusing just on pickleball. We'll keep it.
Just
Send us suggestions if there's topics you guys think would be important.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Take care. Thank you.